There's just no need whatsoever for a family crossover to be this fast. It's scary fast.
Do you think that you can keep this car for
ever? If you like driving fast, then I'm afraid there is no competition.
It's very nearly the perfect family EV, to be honest.
I think this is gonna look fresh in 5, 10, 15 years from now.
They've always been good at designing cars. Now they're getting better at building them as well. It kind of looks like a Model 3 that's slightly bloated or a Model X that's shrunk in the wash. Either way, I think this is actually better looking than both of those cars. Proportionally, it's just right, to me anyway. Elsewhere, I mean, it's a lot of Model 3 parts that have been crammed onto the Model Y, except at the sides. You've got this black wheel arch cladding down here to give it a more rugged, robust look. Big ride height, just to give it that ability to go off-road if you want. You get the option of 19s or 20s on the long-range version, or 21s on the performance version. I wouldn't want to go any smaller than 20s though, otherwise the wheels start to look a bit lost. Elsewhere, you got a black finish on the cameras, black finish around the windows, black finish on the door handles. This door handle is quite fascinating, to me at least. Watch this, you press it and it pops the door open for you. Make it easier to get in and out. And then this is the big news, a hatchback. That is what customers want because it gives you loads and loads of practicality. Also, look at the way it slopes down like a coupe and then kicks up at the rear. Very sporty.
First of all, let's look at the bean shape of the Tesla Model Y. I really like the line flow in this design. As I talked about in the front view, you have this line going right here, as you can see. If I can hit the right layer, first of all, we have this line right here stretching into the body and creates this long, beautiful sweeping line right here. And then it kind of connects to the rear end, but it disappears in this surface right here. So it almost reaches each other. It almost creates a continuous line as the shoulder line, but I kind of like that it fades right here in this surface right here. It makes it interesting to look at. And then you have, of course, this beautiful ducktail in the rear end of the design, sending the design off. And as I said, if you have the spoiler on, it's gonna be more of an upswing right here, and it looks really good. This area of both the Model 3 and the Model Y is probably my favorite surfacing design of both these two cars. And then, of course, you have the bottom line right here that goes into the bumper. So we have a nice line flow going on right here, and I really like the design of this. And I think this is gonna look fresh in 5, 10, 15 years from now.
One thing that Teslas tend to get criticized for are their panel gaps, particularly on the Model 3 on the rear boot lid, especially on the versions which come with an electrically operated tailgate. If you push down on these areas, they tend to flex quite a lot, but there's none of that happening on the Model Y. And actually, the panel gaps are quite uniform and I think are perfectly acceptable. There's one area on the Model 3 in particular that always annoyed me, and that was the panel gaps along this front trunk. Quite often you'd see one side with a tighter gap than the other, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. But on the Y, certainly this example, all of this is uniform. Now I wonder if that's down to these Ys being built in Shanghai and maybe the Shanghai plant being superior at building cars. But whatever the case, Tesla, they've always been good at designing cars. Now they're getting better at building them as well.
Let's start with the major touch points like the steering wheel, the seats, the center armrest, and the doors, which look and feel great. Sure, it's not real leather, but it is impressively soft and supple and has better stain resistance. The power-operated seats are really comfortable, and there's a tangible sense of space up front thanks to its tall body and that massive glass roof. You also get power-adjustable steering wheel and mirrors, but you have to dial through a few menus to adjust them. That's one of the things with the Tesla. The cockpit is so clean and so simple that even the most basic functions have to be operated through the screen. We're talking about the glove box, the air conditioning, the climate control, and even air vent direction. It's annoying in some ways and can be overwhelming for the uninitiated, but you do get used to it, and there are clever inclusions like a medical grade HEPA filter, heated seats for all occupants, and even a pet mode for when you leave little Poochie in the car.
What is it like up front? Well, if you're familiar with the Model 3, then you're gonna know all about the Model Y because it's basically identical to the smaller car. Almost everything is controlled via this huge 15-inch touchscreen in front of you. It can be quite tricky to wrap your head around, but after a few weeks of using it, then it kind of becomes second nature. How about the rest of the interior? Well, it's available in either black or white. If you go for black, you get a wood grain effect on the dashboard, whereas if you go for white, then you get white seats and a white finish across the dash. None of this, by the way, is leather. It's all animal free, which means that if you're a vegan or if you just, want to be kind to the environment, then this car should appeal to you. In terms of storage up front, there's lots of it. Basically because there's no transmission, that means the transmission tunnel can be used for storing stuff. So in the middle, you've got bags of space, you've got a couple of places to wirelessly charge your mobile phone up here, just below the main screen, and also the door pockets are massive as well.
While the SUV misses out on a lot of features standard on other modern cars like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity, it does have excellent sat-nav, a reasonably reliable voice control system, and is basically a multimedia tool on wheels.
One thing that's very different between the Y and the 3 though is the ride height. I'm sitting so much higher up, and people who value SUVs or crossovers because of that enhanced ride height are really going to appreciate the extra visibility you get from this car. While I'm on the subject of visibility though, that rear screen is so small. It's almost pointlessly small. It's very difficult to see what's going on through the rear view mirror.
The back seat is quite roomy for my 6-foot frame. There's plenty of legroom, and I like the fact I can get my feet right under the seats there. It's a bit like premium economy. And look at this, headroom is really good, especially compared to the Tesla Model 3 sedan.
The Model Y's boot offers around 842 litres from floor to ceiling. It's massive, and it gets even more massive if you fold the seats down using 2 buttons at the side. Tesla will at some stage offer a 7-seater version, but even this 5-seater spec is practical, with plenty of storage space in small cubbies on the left and right, and a hidden space for charging cables. There's even a sizable underfloor compartment, almost big enough for a medium-sized human being, if you're interested. Meanwhile, at the front, the 114-litre front trunk is also very sizable, bigger than the one you get in the Model 3, although not quite large enough for a person.
The ride quality in the Model Y is now fantastic for a vehicle in its class. It's not as great as an air suspension, and there are smoother cars out there, but ride quality is great in the 2022 and 2023 Model Y. I find that the stock 19-inch wheels help the ride too. The 20-inch induction wheels look cool, but include shallower tires, which make the ride bumpier. Driving and handling on the Model Y are really great though. The wheel is very responsive, so that coupled with instant torque on the accelerator makes this car feel amazing to drive.
The ride quality and vantage point, this car drives so well. It just feels very smooth. Going from a Model 3 to Model Y, like sitting up higher just feels good, and like you see more things and you have more space, so a better vantage point. And then quickness, this is the long-range dual motor all-wheel drive, and it's like quicker than my Model 3, so it is fun to kind of
giddy up.
One area where the Tesla Model Y really excels is with its straight line performance. It's so rapid. So right now, there are 2 versions. There's the Model Y Performance, which will do 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, which is just, well, it's just ridiculous really, isn't it? Today, I'm in the Model Y Long Range, which also uses 2 motors, one at the front and one at the rear. This one does 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. There's just no need whatsoever for a family crossover to be this fast. It's scary fast.
I mean, I do appreciate that the Model Y has good range, and I think it's still highly competitive, if not the best, in its class among other EVs, but I don't think we get the range that is kind of promised. The network is growing and it's amazing. The supercharger network is great, but there are still pockets. Both of our families live off the beaten path a little bit, and even though there are superchargers kind of around our center location, we don't have them too close.
One other negative consequence of that extra weight is reduced range. It uses a 70 kilowatt hour battery pack, which can give a range of 315 miles, which is brilliant, but it's not quite as brilliant as the Model 3, which can do 360 miles. So I guess when you're buying the Model Y, you do have to sacrifice range in order to have that extra practicality.
The The 62 kilowatt hour battery pack is good for a claimed 455 kilometers with a full charge, which takes around 24 hours using a regular 3-pin household power point. It's much quicker using fast chargers, as you can see in our little pop-up graphic, and the fact that Tesla's EVs have access to an established charging network effectively doubles the number of charging options compared to other EVs.
Thankfully, the Model Y excels in terms of recharging. It has access to arguably the widest, most reliable charging infrastructure, as it can use both the supercharger network from Tesla or pretty much any other network. It will charge at a very impressive 250 kilowatts, which is fast enough to regain 75 miles of range in 5 minutes at a rate of 1,000 miles of charging per hour. And that's quicker than most of its rivals.
I love it. I'm glad that we have it. Very satisfied, and it's been a great car, and no issues. Like, other than the first, like, the fit and finish, literally it's no issues whatsoever.
No, and I secretly love to race people if they're giving me sass. Ease on that pedal, and then if they're bumping me up, then I just punch it.
So should you buy this car? Well, absolutely. It's got a lot going for it, especially in terms of the range and the infrastructure and the speed of recharging. But bear in mind, Tesla's rivals in many ways are just as good, and in a lot of ways are even better.
Do you feel like it's been worth the money that we spent on it? I know we spent a lot of money.
Yes.
Do you think that you can keep this car for
ever
the next 10 years and you'll be fine with it?
Yes.